I remember seeing the previews of Gigantic and seeing those gargantuan creatures and fantasizing about how the battle would work out with those two clashing overhead really gave me that childlike awe, and I was honestly looking forward to Gigantic coming out. I did actually play in the alpha and have followed its development for a long time now. However, it's had a very rough ride and got the curse of Windows 10. What do I mean by that? Well, it came out as an exclusive on the Windows 10 store. Now, from other stories, quite a while ago, Call of Duty came out and people were getting refunds because nobody else was playing on the Windows 10 version. And honestly, the Windows 10 store, from what I can tell, nobody really uses it. So finally it's on Steam and it's on Windows 7, 8 and 10 now. What is Gigantic? Well, it's described as a free-to-play strategic hero shooter, and you do have heroes with 5 abilities, 1 in-hand weapon, 3 active abilities, and an ultimate. Now, a lot of people like to compare these new emerging hero shooters and hero-based games. Now, I'd say that there's sort of a 3D chart almost of games going from the arcadey shooters to the current traditional MOBAs, and the traditional MOBAs themselves are kind of a hybrid of strategy games and RPG games, as the original Dota sort of set out from a tower defense mod on the original Warcraft, which was a strategy game. So it's not exactly one single path, but if you did have a path going from MOBA to shooter, you'd have Overwatch at the very end, close to the shooter, and then you'd have Paladins because it's more of a MOBA, and then you'd have Gigantic much closer to the traditional MOBA games. Why? Because creatures fill the gap of creeps and towers in this game, and it has the traditional format of towers, which are the creatures, and an ancient or base which you need to destroy as the win condition, and in this case those are the Gigantic guardian creatures, although they also have a part to play in the game attacking and defending. There's the Astral War Owl or the Angry Wyvern type of these Gigantic creatures. The idea of items and levels MOBAs usually have are almost melded into one with their skill level up system in Gigantic, which on each level gives you branching pathways and specialization which can completely change the way your hero plays, even going from a melee attacker to a ranged one. But anyway, that's a very rough comparison and overview, and I'll just get deeper into the gameplay now and how the game actually plays and if it's good or not. And really what I want to answer in this video is whether or not Gigantic is worth your time and worth a play. So, on the gameplay, each Guardian has 3 chunks of health and some shielding or extra life you need to burn to get to those critical health points. Everything you achieve in the game adds up in a power meter, getting kills, destroying enemy creatures, and having as many creatures up passively gaining this power or channeling it yourself. The top bar is a power bar, and when full, on either side, your Guardian or their Guardian will move across the map and pin down the enemy Guardian, which during this time you can attack their weak spot, a crest type thing on both of the Guardians. The team that didn't get to this mode loses all of their power built up, so that's a trollololol there. But anyway, if you take away the full health bar on the champion up to the heart, then you will wound it, taking away one of the 3 chunks of its main health. If not, then you'll have taken away the shield, making the next fight easier. The idea is, once you get all these 3 bars down, then the team that killed that Guardian wins. How does the game actually play out then? Your team will be fighting for the spots across the map where you can put the creatures. Team fights will often be initiated by these creatures, trying to take them out, to score points, or to stop the enemy team from passively generating the power. And on the minimap it will show the creatures being attacked, or you can see where the enemies are, and people will rush in to defend, and there will often be a big bruiser. Other smaller clashes will happen on the map, but for the most part they'll play out close to these objectives, sometimes with the attacker disengaging to fight further from the creatures, which can heal, shield, give damage, and a few other things. The pace of the game is definitely fun. Building up for an attack isn't too lengthy of a process. A couple of major fights here and there, and creature battles will often set the attack phase in motion. If the game is going on too long, it will also take you into the final clash, making the arena smaller, or even transporting you to a smaller zone, pushing you to clash more and build up power faster. The attack phases are fun, rushing back to defend your Guardian, throwing your body in front of its weak spot, trying to blast off the waves of kamikaze crazed enemies just there to wound your big boss, and sometimes tossing up whether it's a better idea to try and nullify the defenders, and thinking about how you'll stop your enemies from getting close, whilst also stopping those at range taking pot shots at your Guardian's weak spot. You also have this system where you gain focus when you're doing things in the game, and you can often upgrade your skills to gain this focus as well. You can use this focus either to use a powerful ultimate, which still doesn't actually seem to have much of an impact as it does in Overwatch and traditional MOBAs. They just help to win point fights, they're not necessarily game winners, but you can also use these to upgrade your creatures, the tower type things, and are useful there to make your position stronger, and it's a toss-up whether you use your focus to upgrade the towers other creatures, or to use them as ultimates to push through. And especially good when you're trying to take out an enemy guardian or defend your own guardian. When everybody is grouped up, a lot of the attacks have a big AoE blast, which is just another element to the game, a little bit of strategy there. The actual way most heroes play is also fun. Abilities are all skill shots, although some have homing lock-on type properties, and even without a specific movement ability, all champions are mobile using sprint and just normally jumping, which is tied to a stamina meter whilst you're in combat, but is easy to refill, and when you come out of spawn and are out of combat, you can use it indefinitely. Though most do have teleports, super jumps, and even jetpacks, and my favourite character even skates along the ground and can ride a rainbow dash with the right skills upgraded. This is definitely a highly mobile game, and there's a lot of movement elements in it, sometimes even overshadowing the shooting element. Base attacks are split between melee and ranged, and honestly playing so little I find it hard to say how much impact these both have, but from what I've played, not having as many ranged champions as your enemy can prove fatal, as bridging the gap to attack is quite difficult. But this isn't too different from traditional MOBA games, as you don't want a full melee attack team. Again, most of the heroes feel fluid to play, and during the matches, picking those customizations for each ability can shake that up and keep things fresh. There's an Astral Sword Wielder that can AoE buff damage, speed and health, which looks like a crystal gem plucked out of Steven Universe. There's Robin Hood, the Disney one, where he was a fox. Well, actually, Vodun is more maybe half goat. I'm not even sure. And then we have a sniper, robot with miniguns, jetpacking pistolier, tentacle prawn mistress of poisons, and a resident Grandpa Sven who throws potions for AoE healing, mobility and debuffs. In short, there's a lot to choose from, and there's some familiar faces and stereotypes that we can see in other hero shooters, but obviously in different configurations, and lots of other abilities taken from MOBA games and deeper RPGs, and presented in their own unique ways. I do feel, especially with melee champions, that the fights can get very brawly and messy, and there'll be so much going on, people flailing around, feeling a bit like you're button mashing at times. And this is interesting as someone who follows Paladins quite closely. Their devs have said quite a few times they want to avoid a full melee champion for this reason. They didn't want there to be a brawl. But for the most part, 1v1s feel fine. But as soon as a group battle happens and you're a melee champion, it can feel like you're back in Mortal Kombat for the first time, not really knowing what the combos are, and you're just trying to press whatever. The thing is, I haven't played for a long time and not seriously enough, so it could be that my timings of abilities and finesse aren't exactly top form, and things could get better. And it does seem the more you play heroes, the more you feel like you're stringing those combos together in a logical sense, and swinging with a bit more purpose. One big downside on Gigantic's front is there's no competitive mode play. I'm not talking about esports, just a mode to collect a competitive rank or take seriously, split from a casual mode. Also, the normal matches seem to at least have little in the way of matchmaking. There does seem to be a rift in players' skill and a lot of new players put with veterans. On the main Gigantic Reddit, people are complaining about being matched with teams of new players, and sometimes in the game matches it will seem extremely one-sided. And you can see sometimes an enemy will move in a pretty guided way, and on my Steam version account I am as new as well as those other greenhorns, who will all be having the mad scramble trying to pick things up. But that's always one of the hardest things to judge in a game. There is a text chat now, which wasn't in the previous alpha, or at least when I was playing, and this one does play out mostly like other MOBAs and hero shooters. It's telling you to kill yourself for being bad, proclaiming how good they are when they've got a 0 to 10, kind of to be expected, and the toxicity could be a bit temporary with an influx of frustrated new players clashing with an impatient set of veterans, but that's just something that'll have to be seen. The thing is, the chat's very low profile in the bottom right, so you can ignore it, and there isn't really time to chat properly anyway during the match. There's no time at the start to strategize, you instantly must cannon in and go on to the point. Oh yeah, I didn't mention that, but you're on a flying ship and you cannon off the bridge of that flying ship into the match. And it's pretty damn epic in its own right. But basically you have a bit of a chance of chatting when you die, but you might not get a response. And there's no intermission between rounds. And along with the action being pretty much non-stop, using it properly isn't all too easy. So there is a voice chat, but there's no push to talk currently, so I'm not touching that with a 5-foot barge pole. Breathing down mics, the clack of mechanical keyboards, no thank you. I did turn it on briefly, but nobody talked back anyway, so I'm guessing they had the same idea I did, or didn't know about it at all. The pick phase of the heroes and what the heroes do is a little different. Before you join a match, you pick up the 5 heroes you want to play, but then when you actually get into the match, you can pick different heroes anyway. It's kind of confusing, I'm not sure why, but it does mean that if you pick one hero, you can insta-lock it, which is, I guess, nice. The heroes themselves too have less of a set role and more of subclasses, with most splitting into 2 and being able to specialise more heavily in supporting with heals or damage and tankiness with upgrading your skill trees during the match. Again, it's hard for me to tell at this stage, but it does seem to weaken a little bit the need for certain picks for strong team compositions the other hero shooters and MOBAs have, although from what I see it is kind of wise to have a mix of the roles. Supporting you, the creatures themselves can also fill a role as a healer for example, or tankiness and shielding, or vision depending on which one you put down. So it does put less emphasis on the need for a solo healer for example, and the creatures can come off of their own little spot if they're attacked. In short, on gameplay it's very fluid between attack phases and defense phases, action is dialed up to 10, characters are varied and fun to play, but when things get most hectic it can be a little messy at times. So let's get on to graphics. Is it a beaut? Well, you shouldn't go in expecting a glistening AAA 2017 title. This game has gone for that hyper stylized approach. More than most games actually. I suppose it is closest to LoL style, but even more stylized than that I would say. It does look like Disney meets 3D at times. Though most characters seem to suffer from tiny feet syndrome. Seriously, look at most of the feet compared to the frames they are sporting. How do? The whole designs of the characters do seem to go from small to large, bottom to top, which I suppose is unique in its own quirky way. I find the graphics mostly charming in its approach, but still details can get lost in the character's features, and to some extent I would say things can seem a little blocky, and this is why. The maps themselves too all look nice from afar in the stylized abstract, but when you are close up to the textures they aren't exactly the prettiest. I'd say more than anything it comes down to taste when you jump into this game. You've got epic giants, out there heroes and otherworldly environments, but go stop and stare and you'll spot the rough edges. One thing too on the ice map, the snow effect really makes the lighting look a little muddy and doesn't do wonders to the already stylized champions, so I don't know whether they need to tweak that one there. There are other problems too. There's no native full screen mode, only borderless windowed or windowed. There's only a 16:9 ratio for that hybridized full screen, and there's a cap of 60 FPS, which the devs seem to have defended on the Reddit for a gameplay level playing field reason. The general set of graphics options are also pretty limited too, so not exactly an impressive part of the game, and maybe a deal breaker for some of those people with those 144Hz monitors and are addicted to FPS. Sound-wise, everything is good. I've got no complaints there. The music gives help setting the pace of the match and gives you that motivation to play well or to push on. And the sounds are all satisfying too. Magic zaps, sparkles, shifting of gargantuan creatures, beams aplenty, lots are going on, and it's exciting to hear. Diving into the extra stuff orbiting around the game itself, not just playing it. First off, the game for some reason requires 6GB of RAM to play. I'm not sure why. It's on the older UT engine, there's not so many NPCs, only 5 players on each side. There doesn't seem to be that much taxing in the game. And that's one of the things that seems to have ruffled the feathers of a lot of could-be players who have downloaded the game to be blocked out and then have proceeded to drop a bad review on Steam. This isn't the only quirk with the Steam client, it also requires you to have an Arc account and launch the entire Arc program to play the game, which is also an annoyance. And along with this RAM requirement, seems to have attributed to the Steam reviews being mostly positive rather than being positive or overwhelmingly positive. You'd have hoped they would have just had an external launcher or something. I do feel the reviews are a bit harsh in that they are just reactionary, and at its core it's a very fun game, but surely Perfect World Entertainment and Motiga should have seen this coming. Steam's in an odd place, people tolerate its bloat to a degree, but any more bloat usually rustles people's jimmies, and it's kind of expected to get these bad reviews if you've got a bit of a rocky launch at this point. Another side topic is the free-to-play aspect. How's the grind? How do they make the moolah? Malingos, dollarinos, quids? Well, there's a familiar tale of free-to-play and premium currency, coins or rubies. Apparently rubies are rewarded every 5th level to regular players, which seems to be right, but coins are earned generally playing games and earning mini achievement style badges in the match, or doing quests in the form of fortune cards, and you get a daily draw and seem to get 1 per level plus 1 per hero mastery level you earn during matches, and get to choose between 3 quests, often involving a certain hero or amount of things to do. With the heroes themselves, it seems not too hard of a grind. The older heroes might be ground in a day as they are worth less, whilst newer ones are more expensive and might take a few days. The startup lining pool is pretty small, and I'm not sure exactly on the spread of the champions they've got. There doesn't seem to be much of a healing support champion there. But again, the progression there doesn't seem that difficult. But there are also these creatures, the tower creep type things you can buy. This is where there's a bit of a kicker. You only get the heal, defensive blocking, and vision creatures, and the others you have to buy with gold, the freemium currency, or premium currency if you really want to. and are a similar price to the heroes. I do feel like having one of each at the start may level out the playing field a bit, as they do actually have a gameplay effect, because the ones you don't have are the damaging ones, the dragons, and also this totem thing. But they aren't exactly the hardest thing to get with enough time. And if you do want to splash the cash, the Ultimate Pack, which gives all heroes forever, costs about £24, which could drastically make the grind less of a headache for these creatures. This is a bit of an odd one though. These Founders Pack type things make the game a lot less grindy, and in Gigantic's case almost take it away completely. The creatures are relatively easy to get to if you do prioritize them, and they are the only real gameplay affecting things, plus they offer different bonuses, not exactly one better than the other. In short, there's no pay to win here, which is nice, and most of the things that do affect gameplay are outside of the game. The only thing you have to do is the heroes themselves and these creatures. But again, like I said, you can get the Founders Pack, get rid of the heroes, just grind out the creatures, which would be easy enough. But if you didn't, it's still not the end of the day, as the gameplay effects are there, but they aren't exactly better than each other. On the front of skins and customization, they are split into recolors, then some actual full-on skins. Most are purchasable with lots of gold coin and less premium rubies, though some are ruby only. From flicking through, there are some nice to look at, and change things up completely with the hero. There are also particle effects and glistening, a lot like in Paladins, which I guess is a trick in the engine they both share. My only downside is the fact that because the graphics can be a little blocky, it makes them less pleasing to look at to some degree. But then again, it also makes the less premium colorizations look better as the colours meld more in with the abstract stylings. Customization is always a very subjective thing though. I bet some people we sat here saying, hot diggity, some of these skins look bait-tastic. Another thing worth mentioning is a tutorial, which I've unfortunately been forced to play in several versions of the game, but it's actually pretty decent as it takes you over all the basics and sets out how to play pretty well. There's also a great practice realm with NPC fire-spitting dinosaurs to test your skills out on. It's actually quite fun kicking back in there and is charming in its own way. So, should you play Gigantic? Well, I think you should give it a shot. It's free, it's fun, and it's different to everything else out there at the moment, sitting its own spot between genres. And there's definitely some quirks to be ironed out. Champions halfway in the ground in post-match lobbies, that 6GB jazz, the voice chat. But what's there is generally good. So what do you all think? Has anyone else given Gigantic a shot now it's out on Steam? Well, sort of on Steam. Or will you be giving it a shot? Be sure to let me know in the comments section below. Give a Gigantic like if you did enjoy it, subscribe for more of my content, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching everybody. Joshino.